Hey there, sixth graders. Welcome to Lesson Two, dealing with the amazing wonders of Mesopotamian geography. And we're going to be looking at today, it really affects not just Mesopotamia, but all the ancient river societies Egypt, China, India. Even if we look at river societies in the Americas, like the Mississippian culture. So what we're going to do today is look at why rivers are an ideal location for ancient civilizations to develop from. And key terms we're going to be looking at today include river, irrigation, and permanent society. So rivers are like magnets. They pull people toward them. If we look at the major cities in the United States today, New York City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, Washington, D.C. Whenever we find major cities, 9 times out of 10, not every time, but most of the time, we often find them by a river. Rivers are essential for human cultures and human civilizations, especially in ancient times. Why? Rivers provide resources needed for survival. Water, like clean, fresh water. Rivers carry fresh water, which is what we need to be able to have in order to stay alive. So that's pretty important. But water is also essential for plants to be alive. So if you want to have farming, you need water resources. Not only that, rivers bring soil, which is good for farming, a specific type of soil called silt. So rivers provide food, not to mention another form of food, fish. And rivers provide transportation. And we see since humans are attracted to rivers, so are other animals. And we see that many hunters and gatherers would be drawn towards river resources because, well, other animals are drawn there, and plants would grow much better along areas near river because of the availability of fresh water, because of that silt. And seeing that things grew better around the soil, in that soil, in the area of the soil deposited from river flooding, we see that early agriculture makes use of this. Great soil usually means great crops, and rivers make great soil. So, because people start settling along rivers, they can start to develop agriculture. And once we have agriculture, then nomads, if you remember back our timeline last unit, don't have to be nomadic. They don't have to hunt and gather. They can live permanently in one spot. And we see that since the river is such a good resource, is such a valuable commodity for people to be able to survive because it provides water and food and transportation. Population along rivers tends to increase and increase and increase. So what was a tribe becomes a village, becomes a town, becomes a city-state. And this pattern is repeated over and over and over again in ancient societies, including Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China. Here you see an ancient society building up along the rivers. Almost everything that is here, from the fish that they're hunting and spearing, to the homes that they're building out of reeds, to the animals that they're domesticating, all this comes about because they're near the river, which enables them to have all those resources. Rivers give a lot, but they also take a lot. Rivers are givers and takers of life. Rivers provide many obstacles to survival. So, biggest obstacle, of course, is flooding. All rivers at some point flood, and many rivers flood seasonally, meaning when you have snows melting where river sources are, um, there's usually a greater wave of water that comes, and river flooding can be really damaging. Flooding can be unpredictable. It can hit different areas and have different outcomes at different time. It can wipe away homes. It can wipe away land. It can wipe away crops. It can wipe away lives. Flooding can be very dangerous. But also, lack of flooding can be just as dangerous. If a river doesn't flood, then it doesn't bring silt. The silt is what they need for farming. No silt, no food. So you have a food shortage, a famine. And if there's famine, that means there's going to be death. So the flooding, either lack of or over amount of flooding in rivers, is a major obstacle that the civilizations are going to need to solve. It's a problem they're going to need to solve with innovation in order to be successful societies. And we're going to see that each society manages river flooding in many different ways. There's not one universal solution to river flooding, and it's amazing how varied the innovations are to deal with it. So here we see silt. Rich silt comes from farming, so without silt, you don't have food. And that silt leads to massive farmlands, like as we see here in Egypt, near the Nile banks. But this scene could be repeated in Mesopotamia, India, and China. But if flooding is not controlled, then you can have massive flooding of an area like we see here in Mesopotamia. So your exit card today is: what other things in nature can be considered both givers and takers of life? We talked about how a river gives life, but we also talked about how flooding can take lives. So I'd like you to think of something else in nature that both gives and takes life. Explain your answer in detail. I look forward to reading it. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you next class. Make sure you post up all your work on Google Classroom.